on, y'all? It's your boy Philly, aka Philly Boy Wonder, aka your mama goddamn favorite African. We in the whip recording to the goddamn when the role nearly destroys an actor's life. Let's see what this is all about.
There are some key differences between an actor and a method actor. An actor will do what they need to do to get the job done, and a method actor will suffer deep psychological torture to make you fully believe their role is their true identity. To prepare for a role, a good actor will stick to the basics, hire a speech coach to develop an accent or stutter, pick up an intense workout regimen, or wear prosthetics like large noses or fat suits.
Hey bro, hold on. We gotta say this right now. To any of y'all that haven't seen the Penguin series, y'all need to see that. I don't even care if you're not even into the DC universe, because honestly, frankly, it's hard for me to even get into that universe considering the fact that they reboot and recast every like 2 years. And it did bother me a little bit because I love this show so much. But all I'm going to just say is this, y'all. You need to see this show. This is hands down one of the best superhero, supervillain, whatever type shows I have ever seen. And it was a miniseries. It was like 8 episodes. They might come back with season 2. I don't know that for sure. But I'm telling y'all need to watch the show. The writing, the cinematography, the acting, everything about it is perfect. I'm serious. It's amazing.
They do what they need to do to look like they felt sad, happy, angry, or in pain. However, a method actor doesn't believe it's enough to just look like they have these emotions. They need to actually feel these emotions. And some method actors go to extreme lengths to make the performance perfect. From hitting themselves, to picking up a substance habit, to locking themselves in a dark room for a month to transform into a full-blown schizophrenic murderer.
I heard about that shit, bro. The Heath Ledger thing, that's different. He's different for that.
Unfortunately, the dedication to the role can have some drastic real-life consequences, with some method actors losing their sanity and potentially their lives for their art. Today we're going to discuss some of the all-time greats and the dark life of method acting, starting with Daniel Day-Lewis, who is arguably the king of the method. One of Daniel's most immersive performances was in the movie My Left Foot. Day-Lewis played Christy Brown, an Irish poet, writer, and painter with cerebral palsy.
Yeah, I know what age that's
looks like Jim Carrey.
Same age as me.
Don't give him any more.
Well, Steve Proctor told me.
Touch it, and I'll kick you. The only part of your...
To prepare for this role, Day-Lewis spent most of his free time with kids suffering from cerebral palsy. He wanted to try his best to understand how they struggled and how they felt judged. By the time he arrived on set, Daniel Day-Lewis was completely immersed in his disabled character, and he wouldn't break character for anyone. Daniel's co-star, Kristen Sheridan, found it almost unbearable. He'd call you by your film name, and you'd call him Christy. It was madness. You'd be feeding him and wheeling him around. During the entire film, I only saw him walking once. Lewis's madness would pay off, as this role earned him his first Oscar for Best Actor a year later.
But then can you really hate on him? Because it's like, damn, the girl could be like, oh my god, it was so annoying, I had to feed him and all this, but the brother won an Oscar. I mean, you can't hate it. You can't.
However, this was not the end of method acting for Daniel Day-Lewis. He would continue to go to extreme lengths to embody these characters he was hired to portray, focusing on the smallest details that some might argue are not even necessary. For example, in his role as John Proctor in The Crucible, Day-Lewis built a 17th century house for himself only using mid-century tools. He built the rest of the set while remaining in costume the entire time, and he even lived in this replica home without running water or electricity for the duration of the film. As Hawkeye in The Last of the Mohicans, Day-Lewis would not eat anything unless he hunted it down himself in the Alabama wilderness. To Daniel Day-Lewis, method acting isn't really a choice. If he is not able to be a part of his character's world, he believes he won't be able to act at all.
I can't say for sure that it necessarily helps me or helps what I'm doing, but I believe that it does. I have a strong belief that it does, and that's really...
That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all that matters. And
look, it probably does, though. That's the thing. It's like, at this point, it's really all about perception, and it's like a subjective opinion, because it's like, you could look at it and be like, what are you doing? This is crazy, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, as a viewer, when you are watching a movie, to be fully immersed in that experience and know that you are getting the best possible product because these people have literally driven themselves to the brink of insanity, you gotta respect it a little bit. It's one of those things I would look at it as, in most cases, or I'd probably say some cases, because honestly, I would even do some method acting if I really got down to it. But there are some cases where I probably wouldn't do what they do, but I can still respect it because I'm like, bro, you are the most dedicated to your craft and you are making, like I said, the best possible product imaginable. So it's like, I can't even hate on it, bro. I respect it because I like acting too. It's fun.
Beyond that, Charlie, I'd say that it's as much to do with this whole thing. The beginning of this, the life of any individual piece of work begins with a compulsion of some kind. And
Writing,
necessarily
acting,
you share
directing.
that with the director, otherwise you might as well stay at home. You have a shared sense of urgency to tell that story. And this unleashes a curiosity that is very hard to satisfy. And that curiosity leads you into all kinds of strange and unknown places. It really seems to me to be part of the pleasure of that work. You explore that world, you discover it, you create it to some extent yourself. Why the hell not hang around there for a while?
By hanging around in these made-up worlds he created, Daniel has helped make some of the greatest movies in history, like Gangs of New York with Martin Scorsese, or Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood.
This is crazy how I haven't seen any of these movies, and I'm trying to hate on or diss on him because I haven't seen honestly most movies, and I'm somebody who honestly low-key aspires to be an actor one day and like get into the film industry. So I kind of find it pretty interesting how I have not seen any of the biggest movies. Like, y'all will be really, really surprised. I swear, I haven't seen Back to the Future, Star Wars, Indiana Jones. Like, I haven't seen like a lot of the classic, timeless films that everybody seems to know. So I really got to tap in and do my research because I'm not gonna lie, I feel like these movies that he just mentioned, whatever they're called again, what's it
Gangs
called?
of New York with Martin
Gangs of New
Scorsese, or Paul Thomas
There Will
Anderson's
Be Blood. Like, yeah, these are probably historic movies that I probably gotta check out.
There Will Be Blood.
Louder, say it louder. I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my child!
Yep.
I've abandoned my boy!
Although his
There's that
approach
real
to method
energy.
acting has made him an industry legend, Day-Lewis's creative process takes an unimaginable toll on his health and well-being. Between films, he's known to disappear for months or years before taking on another role, usually refusing to share what he's been doing during that
I
time.
don't blame
He
him.
feels that the method is probably necessary for his acting. However, in his rare interviews, he has said that performing can be taxing, and it forces him to take breaks to stay grounded.
The way in which I'm able to enjoy the work most seems to mean that I then have to stay away from it for a while.
What Daniel Day-Lewis is describing is a common feeling among method actors. He was just lucky enough to strike a balance where he could always find himself again. Although for some actors, removing themselves from a role isn't so easy. Like when Jim Carrey basically lost his sanity and truly believed he was possessed by
Let me guess. Hold on. Before he says it, is it The Mask? I don't know what role he's talking about, but it's got to be The Mask, right? Let's see.
a dead artist named Andy Kaufman. But real quick, if you're busy but still want to eat real, high-quality meals without cooking or meal prep, Cook Unity is the meal delivery. Each week and every week, skip week, pork bowls or soft, and the slug with carrot that when it's lightly, it never gets per week. If you want to click the link of Chef Comedy icon and Hollywood fresh to your door. In the 1990s, Jim Carrey became a comedy icon in Hollywood, starring in classics like The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and The Truman Show. He had become a bigger star than most actors or comedians could possibly dream of. And while he might not have claimed to be a method actor, he often heavily immersed himself in most of his roles. Over time, he felt that identity was an illusion, and he was done playing a game he saw as completely meaningless.
I can say right now that Jim Carrey is a top 5 entertainer of all time. In terms of pure talent, he is one of the most talented entertainers we have ever seen. He's on like a Jamie Foxx level. Extremely multifaceted, extremely devoted to his craft, extremely influential and impactful in comedy and entertainment. Like, he is a living legend, bro. I would love to meet him and just pick his brain, because I feel like a lane that I want to be in is very similar to, like I said, the Jamie Foxxes, the Jim Carreys, the Denzels, the people who are extremely multifaceted, legendary characters in this game who are just known for being like grand acts in their space. Like Jim Carrey, bro, that motherfucker's a comedic genius. This is somebody that we cannot like underrate at all. He's impossible to underrate. This dude's a GOAT. I gotta give him his flowers.
It's not our world.
None
That's
of this
the
is
key.
real?
Nope.
So you're just passing
We don't
through?
matter. We don't matter.
Oh.
In fact, there was one specific role that made Carrey realize he lost his sense of self, which was during the film Man on the Moon, a biopic about his idol, performance artist Andy Kaufman.
I don't know if you call it method acting or whatever. It's like he was gonna
channel Andy Kaufman. He became Andy Kaufman for these 80 days that he was on the set, we were filming this movie.
Calling Andy Kaufman a comedian feels like an oversimplification. He was an enigma. His entire career was basically an experiment in how far he could blur the lines between comedy, performance art, and real life. During one of his comedy sets, Kaufman started reading The Great Gatsby verbatim. No jokes, just reading it straight. When people started leaving or booing, he kept going. Totally deadpan, treating it as an actual performance. Andy even started wrestling women at his comedy shows. He'd trash talk women, say they belonged in the kitchen, and challenge them to real matches.
Okay, I don't know too much about Andy Kaufman, but I don't see any benefit to like doing either of those things, fighting women and reading a book on a comedy set. I don't really get that, but hey man, it's each his own.
He even created alter egos that became famous in pop culture. The most prominent one was irreverent lounge singer Tony Clifton. The character was a chronic smoker and drinker who would show up at random events or television shoots with prostitutes. To add to this confusing performance art, Andy Kaufman's longtime friend Bob Zmuda would often play Tony Clifton, making some people believe Clifton was a real person since Andy and Clifton would be in the same room at once.
What the hell?
Kaufman also loved professional wrestling, mostly because of the art of kayfabe, which is the established practice where wrestlers and their storylines are presented as real even though they are staged performances.
So
Kaufman's
WWE,
rivalry with Jerry
basically.
Lawler was one that brought professional wrestling into the mainstream. Their commitment to kayfabe was so legendary that it made audiences believe they genuinely hated each other. After one fight with Lawler in the ring, Andy Kaufman spent 3 nights in the hospital, but he wasn't actually hurt badly. He could have left in a few hours. He committed to his fake injury to make their next stunt more shocking. Kaufman showed up to an interview with David Letterman wearing a neck brace. Then the two traded insults before Lawler slapped Kaufman and they broke out into a fight in front of a live studio audience. Now remember, Lawler and Kaufman were acting. They were actually friends in real life. Kaufman's performances confused people so much that when he died from lung cancer in 1984, a lot of fans believed his own funeral was just another prank. But Lawler and Kaufman remained so committed to their art that when Andy Kaufman died in real life, Lawler still remained in kayfabe.
But really, I am not, I've had calls all week ever since, ever since Andy Kaufman did pass away. I've had calls from TV stations all across the country wanting to know my comments about Andy Kaufman's death. I'm really the wrong person to talk to about that. I didn't like Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman didn't like me. I'm sorry that the guy's dead, but I would think that, I always thought that when somebody dies, you talk to somebody that thought a lot of him. I hope that if I die, they don't interview Jimmy Hart, because, I can imagine what he's going to say about it.
From the outside, Lawler's comments about Kaufman seem extremely harsh, but this is exactly what Kaufman would have wanted.
See, but once again, I don't get it, but hey, to each his own once again, but that is a little too much. I'll be real. I don't know why you would continue the bit when he's dead. The bit's over. He's dead. Like, he's gone. There's nothing to continue. There's no more sketches. There's no more skits. There's nothing. He's gone. So it's like, I don't know.
Portray Andy Kaufman in a movie would take every ounce of focus that Jim Carrey had, and it was about to destroy him.
I think it's been a long process, and I'm not saying that I don't get caught up in the story, because the story's compelling sometimes. But it was definitely an important moment in the process where I found myself subjugating Jim Carrey for Andy Kaufman and Tony Clifton, and then at the end of it looking for Jim Carrey again and having trouble finding him. And at a certain point, I realized, hey, wait a second, if it's so easy to lose Jim Carrey, who the hell is Jim Carrey?
Carrey lost his identity before the cameras even started rolling. He recalls lounging on a Malibu beach when he heard he got the part. After the news set in, Carrey looked at the ocean and thought, where would Andy be? What would he be doing right now? He actually assumed Andy would be trying to communicate telepathically, so he tried to. Immediately, he says 30 or so dolphins surfaced, and then Andy showed up, tapped him on the shoulder, and said, sit down, I'll be doing my movie. What happened afterwards, Carrey adds, was out of my control. control.
That sounds like something out of a TV show or something. Like, that's insane. That's like a South Park skit.
To Jim Carrey, Andy Kaufman wasn't just another role. He was everything Carrey admired as a human being and an artist. By the time production started for Man on the Moon in the late 90s, Carrey fully believed that Andy Kaufman had a paranormal control over his mind and body. I didn't black out, but the balance was way in Andy's corner. I broke a couple of times on weekends and stuff, but pretty much from when I woke up to when I went to bed, the choices were all his. Some of Carrey's methods were simple. He only responded when people called him Andy, and he behaved like him at all times.
John can kill me.
Jesus.
But then he started taking it much further. Carrey threw temper tantrums like Andy, showed up late and drunk to set like Andy, refused to say his lines like Andy, and he even disrespected and talked back to producers like Andy sometimes did.
What?
The entire cast were forced to hang out with Carrey's version of Andy Kaufman and his alter egos for the next 4 months, which led to some of the cast feeling like Carrey was a total nightmare to deal with.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, bro. At that point, if you that dedicated, you might actually go crazy. Like, that is the next level method acting, where you literally embody the character so much to where you are the character. That's insane, bro.
Man on the Moon. It was challenging.
I don't know how people could do that.
It was not easy. You know, he was great, but it was tricky. You know, because it was sometimes hard to just kind of fit yourself around what he was doing. What was going on off camera was more insane than the actual movie.
So it's Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman, who's playing Tony Clifton?
Tony Clifton, yeah. So it was like, he was, whenever he was Tony Clifton, it was particularly mayhem. Yeah, browbeating everybody, and he was walking around with stinky cheese in his pockets, and he was smearing stinky cheese on people when he'd hug you.
What?
He'd be like, give me a hug, give me a hug. And he would he's stinking and
Who pushed back
shit.
the hardest? Who said, get the off me?
Boy, if Jim Carrey put some smelly cheese on me, I don't know how I'd react.
I don't know that anybody did. That was the thing, is that it was such a fucking weird assault that I think people you were so kind of stunned deer in the headlights that you couldn't really tell them to off. We're just like, okay, because it was just sort of, it just occupied the whole room.
Jim was so unbearable that Universal refused to let the behind-the-scenes footage get released because they didn't want the world to think that Jim Carrey was an asshole.
The very first time I
Good
saw
for
him,
them. I mean,
we're on
shit,
the set
that's-
of
that's
Universal
nice of them.
Studios, and all of a sudden I see, bam, this big glass bottle of juice or orange juice or something comes flying through the air, almost hits me, and I'm like, what the heck? And I look over, and there's Jim Carrey, dressed as Andy Kaufman. He says, I'll get you, Lawler! And then he runs inside the trailer.
On more than one occasion, Carrey actually hung out with Andy's real family on the set while portraying their deceased son, providing anyone still grieving Andy's loss with closure. He even got in contact with Andy Kaufman's daughter, who never met him, to give her the chance to say, I love you.
Wow.
Luckily, the family was supportive of this, with Kaufman's sister saying, he wasn't being shticky when he was being Andy with us. He was almost trying to give us a gift. At the time, Jim's performance was controversial. Critics, cast, and crew were unsure if Jim was just doing what was necessary to accurately, artistically represent Andy Kaufman, or if he was just kind of being a dick.
See, that's the thing. That's like the fine line that you got to really look at, right? Because as an actor, like everyone thinks, okay, so you could not go the extra mile, not do this whole Andy Kaufman 24/7 bit, and probably still make a good movie. But that's the difference between a good movie and a great movie, or a great movie and an exceptional movie, right? That's what takes it next level, because I guarantee that if he wasn't doing this bit of completely immersing himself in the character to where it literally drove him to the brink of insanity, then we probably wouldn't have gotten the same level of quality that this movie turned out to be. And I gotta watch it. I haven't even seen it yet, but I just know obviously his performance was fantastic because it's Jim Carrey, and I know it's a very highly regarded movie in his discography. So it's like, when I look at this, I get the perception of how people on set may have, like, God damn, bro, stop being Andy, boy, we offset, we not filming for another 8 hours. I get it, I understand it, but then as a movie consumer, I'm looking at it as like, okay, well, damn, like, he's literally doing everything within his physical human power to give us the best possible product. Like, I gotta give him his props, because I know for a fact that if he didn't fully immerse himself like this, then he wouldn't have been the best Andy Kaufman.
Unfortunately, Jim Carrey is far from the only actor to push things a bit too far. Some actors embracing the method lose control almost entirely, creating performances that cause serious harm. Like when Val Kilmer decided to transform into the Lizard King of rock and roll and was accused of giving a young actress lifelong trauma. Val Kilmer was one of the most famous action movie stars in the business, starring in massive hits like Top Gun and Tombstone. But nothing could have prepared Kilmer for his role as Jim Morrison. Morrison was the frontman of The Doors, a 1960s band fueled by sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But like a lot of artists at the time, the drugs got the best of him, and he always had a difficulty holding it together.
I'd like to do a song that, or a piece of music that's just a pure expression of joy, the coming spring,
Christ, yo.
sunrise, just pure joy.
As a rock musician, Jim Morrison is seen as one of the greats, making legendary songs like Light My Fire, Riders on the Storm, and Break On Through to the Other Side. However, his behavior on and off the stage was unhinged and reckless. During a performance in Miami, Morrison was charged with indecent exposure, shouting profanity and exposing himself to the audience. When confronted about this, or anything else, Morrison just didn't care. He never took advice from anyone. He refused to change, even for his friends and family. His drug use became more excessive, and he was known to have violent episodes where he'd turn on band members or girlfriends. There was one incident where a fight escalated so much that Morrison allegedly held a knife to one of his groupies. But Morrison achieved a level of status that made him immune to criticism. He was so famous that people still defended his behavior as typical rock star antics.
You know, he told me, like, you know, you'd be at a party, like, and it'd be the most beautiful chicks and the best drugs, and everyone's like feeling it, and then Jim Morrison would show up, shove someone down the stairs, and then go lay in the street until the cops come. He goes, "That's bullshit," you know. He like f up the whole scene, and I was like, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of punk.
Morally aligned or not, nobody deserves to go the way Jim did, as Morrison's drug habits sadly got the best of him, and he died at the age of 27 of cardiac arrest. To become Jim Morrison, Kilmer locked himself away and memorized 50 songs from The Doors to perfect his voice, which is a major feat considering most actors just lip sync in fear of doing something wrong. Kilmer then dressed like Jim, walked like him, and moved like him for months until he matched his mannerisms perfectly. But to capture Jim Morrison's unpredictable behavior, Val Kilmer felt that he had to embrace everything that Morrison was, and this took a really dark turn, especially when it came to how Kilmer captured Morrison's controversial relationships with women.
Val, how did you survive the making of this movie? Because really it was as much as a survival as just being an actor, with all the things you had to go through.
Yeah, movies usually are about endurance, prayer, drinking that carrot juice. I didn't get seduced into his style of living, but had to and needed to for the role to be as disciplined as he was in these escapades. He was a very disciplined drinker, as much as he was disciplined artist. He was looking for inspiration every second of the day.
Never heard of that.
Meg Ryan said it kind of got to her after a few months a little bit, the darkness and just the...
Well, I too, I'm provoking. She's getting hammered, so that hurts. No, as much as it hurt to do it, it hurts to be on the, you know, someone calls you 20 years, you start flinching.
In the wake of the Me Too movement, former actress Caitlin O'Heaney made some serious allegations about her experience auditioning for the role, saying Val Kilmer physically assaulted her while everyone around stood and watched it like it was normal. During the audition, Kilmer unexpectedly struck me in the face and knocked me to the ground. When I got to the room, Val Kilmer picked me up and shaked me, throwing me down to the floor. Stone just stood there the whole time, laughing.
Okay, so now that's where I draw the line, y'all. Like, it's one thing when your method acting goes so far to where it psychologically damages yourself. It's a whole nother thing, though, when you do it to somebody else, let alone a young woman. That's crazy talk, boy. I'm not ever doing that. I'm sorry. That's where I draw the line. Like, I don't like that at all, bro, because, see, that's unnecessary. Like, I get it. You're in the character and whatnot. You don't need to traumatize some girl during her audition also, by the way. It's not even on set. It's her audition, bro. Like, what?
Some of the crew have rejected Ohini's claims, like casting director Bramon Garcia, who said Ohini and all other actresses were warned that they would be reading a volatile scene that could result in physical contact. I remember there was a moment Val pinned her to the wall, all part of the scene, she explained, adding that she immediately stopped the scene before it got carried away. But others still see it as suspicious considering Ohini went to the police right after the incident, making a formal report, and the fact that Stone and Kilmer reached a settlement outside of court makes things a little more suspicious. Because of his dedication to the immersive performance, rumors have circulated that Kilmer needed therapy after the role, and if this happens to be true, he's not alone. Replacing one identity for another, especially for long periods of time, often has a price. There's actually a science behind why people have trouble finding their sense of self after becoming another person. In a study called Becoming a Character, Dissociation in Conservatory Acting Students, psychologists attempted to discover the impacts of method acting and what it does to the human brain, using the Dissociative Experiences Scale, DES-2, measuring the disconnect between the mind and reality. Giving the test to actors before and after 6 months of training, doctors found that, although no significant changes occurred over time, acting students scored significantly higher than the general population on the DES-2, showing traits that psychologists find when looking for psychopathy. And while this doesn't mean actors are psychopaths, it does mean they are entering a sort of flow state that can lead to psychopathic tendencies. In theory, given enough time, this proves people can lose their identities to the point where they believe they are someone else. What's interesting is that this same phenomenon was found in law enforcement officers who have to go undercover. In a study conducted at Cedarville University, an investigation into undercover policing revealed that most cops are ordered to stay in character for long periods of time. In criminal organizations, they witness horrible crimes, heists, and even murder. Yet this isn't what cops have trouble forgetting when they finally go back to normal life. In fact, investigators found that the two main stressors cops experience after undercover work don't even have to do with violence, but loss of identity and reintegration into society. As a result, the study showed that almost half of cops going undercover can't fully rejoin society after being someone else, and those who have a chance to rebuild often refuse help from health professionals to protect their careers. You can imagine the difficult choice these method actors have to face. Stay in character and lose your sanity, or go to therapy and admit that you lost your identity acting.
I'm going to therapy, bro. I ain't too prideful for that. Sign me up for therapy. I'll do that in a heartbeat, bro. Are you kidding me?
It takes a deep psychological toll on those who do it, which is especially dark when you consider they are mostly doing it for the good of others. James Gandolfini is another legendary method actor who went to unimaginable lengths, like intentionally causing himself physical pain, just to convince you he was a ruthless mob boss. James Gandolfini changed how people looked at organized crime when he was selected to star in The Sopranos, a series that made HBO a household name.
Okay, I'm actually gonna watch the show. I've never seen it before, but I know it's one of the greatest shows of all time, and I know that it falls in the bracket of shows that I love, which is like crime dramas and shit. I'm definitely gonna watch the show. I don't know when. I gotta get to this Munyon first, but when I find the time, I'm watching Sopranos.
It was a story about an Italian crime family in New Jersey, created by writer and director David Chase. In order to grab the audience's attention, Chase felt that the Sopranos star had to be a badass. To do this, he came up with a leading character named Tony Soprano, a soon-to-be mob boss who embodied the spirit of an old-school American man, trying to fit into U.S. society after the country was in decline. When James Gandolfini auditioned for the role, it was love at first sight. He left in the middle of the first audition, Chase recalled, but we thought he was great. So our casting directors got him to come to my house and he read the scene. And it was like, you know, bang. But Chase had no idea what lengths the actor would go to bring Tony Soprano to life. James Gandolfini's co-star Michael Imperioli, who played Tony's nephew, Christopher Moltisanti, described his first real experience with James' method in an interview on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Like anything, you start to see what you have, like what are these actors bringing, you know, what are they playing to their strengths and what kind of qualities they're bringing to it. You know, just like there's that one scene in the pilot where at the end, towards the end of the pilot, my character tells Tony Soprano, oh, I could go to Hollywood and sell my story or something. And he, in the script, it was kind of, he was like fatherly, like, you don't want to do that and sell out. You got to stay with us and build a family or whatever. And instead, Jim just grabs me, you know, by the throat or something like that, and it became very menacing and very intimidating. And he really, you know, and I think David saw that and was like, oh wow, that's the guy, that's the character. That, and it probably influenced how he took the story and how he would write it. But I think a lot of the tone was already in his head, but seeing what the actors were bringing to it, I think, you know, influenced a lot.
Gandolfini's presence on screen as Tony demanded your attention. He could be calm and quiet during a conversation, only to become explosive and merciless a second later, especially during therapy sessions with co-star Lorraine Bracco as Dr. Melfi.
So you know. You let me sit there.
Please sit down.
How the f am I supposed to trust you? You're my doctor.
Please sit down. You're scaring me. You've been drinking.
Why the f didn't you help her?
Sometimes you can't.
I bet you charged her enough, didn't you, huh? I bet you didn't cut her a deal because you're incompetent.
He was vulnerable, sensitive, ruthless, and cunning all at the same time. The method acting started with the typical tactics. He'd walk around in the set in his character's bathrobe with a mean attitude or interact with actors as if they were in a scene. But as the drama continued throughout the series, Tony Soprano's crimes and behavior would get darker, and Gandolfini did everything he could to match that energy before filming. If Tony was binge eating to cope with inner pain, he would do the same. And to capture physical pain or Tony's anger perfectly, the actor would deliberately drive himself into a rage, hitting himself on the head or depriving himself of sleep. Drink 6 cups of coffee, he said, describing his technique, or just walk around with a rock in your shoe. It's silly, but it works. In an HBO documentary about The Sopranos titled Wise Guy, David Chase and The Sopranos, Michael Imperioli describes the real Gandolfini saying, he was very different than Tony Soprano. He was very laid back, he wore Birkenstocks and liked Green Day and AC/DC. What's funny is that a lot of fans look at Tony Soprano as kind of a role model, which is very scary in a lot of ways. He probably felt that, people thinking he's Tony Soprano and he's not. To adapt, Gandolfini's method acting evolved to the point where he would do anything to make his acting believable, even if it had real-life consequences. James Gandolfini had on and off issues with substance abuse before The Sopranos started. He would drink heavily and was known to smoke constantly. Portraying Tony made things worse. Gandolfini had lost control, often being late to work high on that booger sugar or extremely drunk. HBO's chairman and CEO at the time, Chris Albrecht, talked about the chaos, saying, eventually the cast and crew tried to have an intervention with the actor. He walked in, saw everyone sitting there and was like, oh, F this, and he walked out. Albrecht recalled that Gandolfini said, fire me. The method would continue to destroy Gandolfini inside and out. It's hard to definitively say that method acting was the main cause, but the stress obviously leaked into Gandolfini's personal life.
I think he already had his own personal issues, but then just playing this role just doubled down and was like, yeah, nah, brother, we going deep in the rabbit hole. Like, he went off the deep end when he got to this role.
In 2002, his addiction got so bad that his wife filed for divorce. 3 years later, he failed to appear for the Golden Globes as a presenter, where he was later found severely drunk and making snow angels in front of his hotel, even though there wasn't any snow on the concrete beneath him. Any fan of The Sopranos can't deny that James Gandolfini's method acting was great, and the HBO masterpiece would have never grown into a billion-dollar asset without Tony Soprano as the main character. But it also showed that putting 110% dedication into a role can tear your real life apart. But whenever the topic of method acting comes up, there is a role that must be included in the conversation, and that is Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight, which is easily one of the greatest method acting performances in Hollywood history, one that many suspect actually led to Ledger's early death.
It honestly probably is, and it's very sad, RIP, it probably is the greatest form of method acting of all time. I haven't seen all the other ones, but I have a hunch that it's probably going to be at least top 3, but probably number 1.
Heath Ledger was becoming a major Hollywood star, acting in well-known films like 10 Things I Hate About You, The Patriot, A Knight's Tale, and Brokeback Mountain. As his career was reaching new heights, director Christopher Nolan reached out to see if Ledger would star in his new Batman trilogy. Not as the Joker, but rather billionaire Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins, before the role was ultimately given to Christian Bale. Surprisingly, Heath Ledger wanted nothing to do with the project, politely declining the offer because he failed to see Nolan's vision for the film. To Ledger, the idea of being part of a superhero franchise didn't seem fulfilling. In fact, when an interview asked him if he ever considered being a superhero before, he said, "Not really. With the tights and undies and the boots, I would just feel stupid and silly. I couldn't pull it off, and there are other people who can perfectly, but I just couldn't take myself seriously." But all of that would change when Ledger saw Batman Begins on screen. Sitting in the theater, he realized that Nolan's Batman story wasn't like other comic book adaptations. It was more edgy and dark. And when Ledger learned that the sequel, The Dark Knight, needed someone to play the Joker, Batman's insane arch nemesis, suddenly he needed to be a part of the film no matter what. To become the Joker, Heath Ledger locked himself in a hotel room for over a month. In isolation, he studied the materials that Christopher Nolan gave him and constantly worked on the character's posture, voice, and dark psychology. To bring it to another level, he also made entries into the infamous Joker Diary, which included sinister writing, manic scribbles, and disturbing pictures. Some pages had references to Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange, a movie about psychopaths and abuse. There was a photo of a hyena to develop his signature laugh. Ledger even made a list titled Things That Made Me Laugh, where he wrote blind babies, landmines, AIDS, beloved pets in road accidents, statistics, pencil cases, brunch, and the periodic table of elements. The journal was packed with things that might have had him condemned to a mental institution if it weren't made for a movie.
We looked at paintings by Francis Bacon, visual reference, we looked at all kinds of things, talked about all kinds of different philosophical ideas behind the Joker and anarchy and chaos and what he would represent. And Heath was just ready to do it. He was ready to do something that big.
During filming, Ledger had immersed himself so deeply into the role that even his cast members could not help but be a little apprehensive. He'd look at the diary to tap into his foreign personality and then bring that intensity into every scene. Ledger even told Christian Bale not to hold back when hitting him during fight scenes, which freaked Bale out because he had been training his body to look like a lethal weapon. He was kinda egging me on. I was saying, you know what? I don't need to hit you. It's going to look just as good if I didn't. And he's going, go on, go on, go on. He was slamming himself around, and there were tiled walls inside of that set which were cracked and dented from him hurling himself into them. When people finally saw the Batman movie, most of the audience didn't even know it was Heath Ledger behind the mask of paint. He turned into something truly evil, willing to destroy the world just for the fun of it.
Bro, I'd be so uncomfortable on set watching that, yo. Like, remember the interrogation scene? If y'all, I know y'all seen, most of y'all probably seen The Dark Knight. The interrogation scene when he's getting slammed into the glass and punched and all that, and he's just like, I would be tweaking out if I'm on set watching that.
Ledger's portrayal of the Joker is so damn good that every other actor who plays the comic book villain almost looks like they're trying to do an impression of him. And after The Dark Knight's release in 2008, Heath Ledger's work had finally paid off. Securing over $1 billion at the worldwide box office, it's considered to be the greatest Batman film of all time.
Oh yeah, without question.
Now, we have covered extensively in this video about how many of the great method actors lose themselves, their sanity, and often turn to substances to cope with the psychological torture. Therefore, many just assumed that Ledger was dealing with the exact same thing. After all, his preparation for this role was just as immersive and dedicated as the previous actors I mentioned. However, one key mistake Ledger made was jumping right into another film role after The Dark Knight called The Imaginarium of Dr. Panarsis. And we know the best way to find balance in this brutal world of method acting is to take time off and recalibrate before jumping into a new identity. Tragically, before the movie's release in 2009, the 28-year-old actor was found dead in his Manhattan apartment. On his nightstand was a new prescription and a bottle of pills. Heath Ledger's death was revealed to be an accidental overdose, but that wasn't a good enough explanation for the people who felt like they lost a living legend. Rumors circulated about whether or not he lost his mind after The Dark Knight. Fans and journalists cited something Ledger had said in a New York Times profile while the movie was still in production. It is a physically and mentally draining role. Nolan's Joker is a psychopathic, mass-murdering, schizophrenic clown with zero empathy. This rumor became fact in the court of public opinion that the Joker role killed Heath Ledger. However, the truth was Ledger had been dealing with insomnia years before the Batman trilogy existed. To try and sleep, Ledger would take a lethal cocktail of prescription medications including Oxycontin, Vicodin, Valium, Xanax, Unisom, and Restorol. Heath's own sister reportedly told him in private, "You can't mix drugs that you don't know anything about." Today, people debate whether or not Ledger would still be with us if he did not take on the role as the Joker. Now, I'm no doctor or medical professional, so we can't definitively say that this role was the reason for his early passing, but because of what we know about the deep psychological ramifications of method acting, combined with a toxic combination of prescription pills, it was a tragic disaster waiting to happen.
God damn, man. Patrick CC always dropping bangers, boy. Yeah, no, the Joker is different. The Joker is amazing. The actor Heath Ledger, God rest his soul, he really did his thing. I'll say this though, I do think that what he said, Patrick CC, about how everybody else that's trying to play the Joker just looks like they're cosplaying as him or whatever, trying to be like the Joker. I totally agree with that, because I don't think anyone's gonna ever surpass the Joker that Heath Ledger played. But I gotta give it to Joaquin Phoenix though, because I've seen that movie. That shit was fantastic also. I heard the second one was trash. I didn't see it. It was like a musical or whatever. I haven't seen it yet. I probably won't see it ever. But the first Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix was actually low-key a masterpiece. And he did probably the best possible version that he could do right after Heath Ledger's version, you know? So I don't know, man. I think the method acting, it's that's a fine line to tote, man, because I've even thought about myself in the future when I want to get into acting one day, about like doing that kind of shit where I go deep into the role. But it's like, I don't know if it's if doing method acting is really something that just you have to be psychologically and mentally strong for, or if you do it, it's just going to lead to your demise in general, no matter who you are. I don't know, because I consider myself to be a mentally strong person, but damn, y'all, I don't know. The Joker might be a little too much, but other roles we'll have to see and find out, y'all. But let me know what y'all think in the comments, though. Did y'all not only like this video, but on top of that, have you guys seen other movies that weren't mentioned in this video where method actors went too far? I'm trying to like low-key do a deep dive, and I'm trying to study my film here, y'all. So let me know what y'all think in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna see you on the next goddamn video. You feel me?
Shit on my neck is so bright like a bee. Ball in LA and I feel like Kareem. Run up a mill at my nigga make me. Know that the money is all that you see.